Kianoush Rostami, the Olympic champion, Asian champion, world record holder of Iran, is now competing for Kosovo, and he will lift soon at first the Mediterranean Games and then at the World Championships. He is now 35 years old. And the truth is that his move from Iran to Kosovo was very far from a classic move that we could see in weightlifting nowadays, with people moving to Bahrain, to Qatar. This is something very different, and today I want to dive a little bit into how this really happened. But before that, I just wanted to give a little reminder of who Kianoush Rostami truly is. Rostami has been competing at the highest level internationally since 2010. He competed as a 77 kilo at the World Championships in 2010, but he is most known for being an 85 kilo lifter in the 2010s. He medaled in 2012 at the Olympics. He won the 2016 Olympics. He also won the World Championships in 2011 and 2014. And in my opinion, most importantly, he is the all-time world record holder in the clean and jerk and the total in the 85 kilo weight class that is soon to come back to weightlifting. He clean and jerked 220 kilos, which was a record that stood for some 17 years. Now, there is something that you need to know about Kianoush Rostami. He is not exactly a system lifter. Iran currently has and always had a pretty robust system to develop lifters, and Kianoush Rostami always evolved aside from it. In the lead up to the 2016 Olympics, he actually trained mainly by himself. He wasn't coached by anyone, and he was not joining most of the training camps of the team. And for a while, it was okay, because Kianoush Rostami was one of the most successful weightlifter that Iran had ever seen. But that all changed just after the Olympics in 2017. Because after Rio, Kianoush Rostami was still allowed by the federation to train the way he wanted to train. He was the Olympic champion. But Iran team had a new head coach. His name was Anushirvani, and he was fully opposed to Kianoush Rostami not being a part of the team as a whole. As a lifter of Iran, he considered that Kianoush had to be a part of the team. And that's something that created a lot of friction very early in Kianoush's career. And this actually created so much friction that the head coach will end up leaving the national team of Iran in 2017. 2017 will actually not be a very good year for Kianoush Rostami though. He will bomb out at the World Championships and lose to Arli Mendes. But Kianoush is a special athlete. He is very confident, always was very confident in himself, and after winning the Olympics in Rio and setting the all-time world record at 85 kilos, his particular training method, his particular approach to training in the lead up to competition had been validated. But there was a pretty clear problem. In 2017, as I mentioned, he bombed out, but he also did in 2018 at the Asian Games, and he also bombed out a third time in 2019 at the World Championships. This is where the infamous scene that you might have seen in the past comes from. Kianoush opens with 180 and he fails it, and at some point there is some kind of mishap with the loading of the bar, which is actually, in his defense, really rare, and Kianoush is forced to wait for some 10 minutes before taking his final attempt, and he ends up bombing out. At this point, the Iranian Federation was starting to lose a little bit of faith into Kianoush Rostami, and of course they were fully aware that Kianoush was a great weightlifter that had incredible potential to maybe win a second Olympic, maybe win 2 more Olympics, who knows. But they were also increasingly aware that Kianoush's training methods seemed to not work much anymore, and while the rest of the team was starting to be very successful, the argument was made that Kianoush had to come back to the national team and train with everyone else. But Kianoush didn't agree with this. He wanted to be on his side. He wanted to train with his brother and take care of his own preparation. Of course, at this point, Kianoush Rostami was still fully funded by the federation. It's not like he was fully left by himself, but the conflict started to deepen. And in the lead up to the Tokyo Olympic Games, there was a major problem. Kianoush was supposed to put up a total internationally around the time of the World Championships in 2019. Of course, there were other competitions that he could have taken part in, but he didn't. And because of this, he was not technically even eligible to be qualified for the Olympic Games in Tokyo. Now he will compete at the Qatar Cup and he'll put up a very impressive result. He totaled 403 kilos, which is the exact weight that was lifted by Miso Hasona, who ended up winning the Tokyo Olympics. And finally, he had a last chance opportunity to qualify for the Olympics in 2021, but he was it's a little bit unclear, but he either withdrew from the competition or was forbidden by the federation to compete there at the last chance qualifier for 2021. And so due to like a mix of a lot of different factors, Kianoush Rostami wasn't able to qualify for the Tokyo Olympics. Now, the truth is that had he competed in Tokyo, he would have at least been a medalist, if not the winner. There is a world in which Kianoush Rostami could have beaten Miso Hasona in Tokyo, but the truth is that he just didn't. And this is when things get a little bit more blurry. Of course, Kianoush Rostami claimed fully that the federation was to blame, but he was not faultless. He bombed out when he shouldn't have. He could have opened lighter at the World Championships in 2019. He could have taken part in more competitions, and so you could say that it's somehow a mix of his pretty big ego and also of the mishandlement of his career by the Iranian Federation. But the Paris Olympics were coming, and so Kianoush Rostami just went back to work. He decided to drop down to 89 kilos, which was the new Olympic category, and he competed in the World Championships in Bogota in 2022. And there he will actually do pretty well. He will snatch in the 170s, clean and jerk in the 200s. He only placed 4th, but he was still pretty decent. And as it was so often the case in Kianoush's career, this came after a long period of not competing and of not being sure if he actually was training a lot or not. But in 2022, something pretty bad for him will happen. The coach that I mentioned earlier that left the federation because of the disagreement with Kianoush Rostami suddenly became the president of the Iranian Federation. And that wasn't good for Kianoush. He was already in conflict with the Iranian Federation, and having the head of the federation now being the coach that left the team because he didn't want to train with them was not good. Now, just like in 2021, it is too far-fetched to say that the federation alone led to Kianoush Rostami not taking part in the Paris Olympics. He competed at the Asian Championships in 2023 and only did a 351 kilo total at 81 kilos, which is, by every possible standard, not very good. But then something bigger came. There was an Iranian selection trial in 2023 to decide who would take part in the World Championships. And Kianoush, supposedly for injury, didn't show up. This means that he didn't put up a qualifying total for the World Championships within the system of the Iranian Federation. And because of this, he will miss out on the World Championships in 2023. And it just so happened that the participation at the Worlds in 2023 was mandatory to be able to qualify for the Paris Olympics. He later tried to ask the IWF to allow him to compete in the Qatar Cup as a replacement event to be able to put up a result that would be equivalent to what he would have needed, and the IWF just didn't agree. So effectively, Kianoush Rostami missed out on his second Olympic Games in a row. And that's when the Kosovo move appears. Throughout the years, the president of the Kosovan Federation, Astrid Asani, had been in contact with Kianoush Rostami on and off during training camps, during international competition. They had talked, and Kianoush Rostami had openly mentioned the fact that he was not in agreement with what the Iranian Federation was doing to him. And so just like that, Kosovo had a lead. They knew that if they were able to provide Kianoush Rostami with the conditions that he required, they could potentially have him compete for them. At this point, Kianoush had already made it public that because of the actions of the federation and because of the apparent lack of support that he received, he would be looking into competing for a different country. And so that's what he did. Kosovo and Kianoush Rostami ended up striking a deal for 10 years of contract for Kosovo. Kianoush would compete for as long as he could, as long as he would be able to, and would then coach the athletes of Team Kosovo. The president of the Kosovan Federation personally contacted the president of Kosovo, Vjosa Osmani, to fast-track the acquisition of a passport for Kianoush. And just like that, it looked like Kianoush would be able to represent Kosovo at the World Championships as soon as 2024. Iran and Kosovo struck an agreement, and it seemed that everything was ready for Kianoush to be able to compete in 2024. But the fact is that he wasn't able to compete in 2024. He showed up, and you probably have seen footage of him in the training hall of the World Championships, doing 180 kilos in the snatch, 215 kilos in the clean jerk, actually some of his biggest lifts ever. But effectively, Iran did not complete the change of nationality, or approve the change of nationality rather, in time. Despite being in agreement with Kosovo, they encountered some kind of problems. Now, it is not my place to say if Iran on purpose didn't fulfill all of their obligations, or if it was more so political and administrative things that happened. Iran does not recognize Kosovo as an independent country, so that definitely didn't help. But the fact was that as a final struggle, Kianoush Rostami was held off from the World Championships in 2024, which he maybe could have won. And this leads up to last year in 2025. Kianoush showed up at the World Championships and competed and did pretty decent. He ended up 5th in the 94 kilo weight class. He once again snatched in the 170s, clean jerked in the 200s. But of course he was not fully peaked, which was to be expected, honestly. He had not competed in many years, and there was so many struggles surrounding him competing for Kosovo that at this point it didn't even seem real that Kianoush would end up competing for Kosovo. But yet that's what he did. And since then he has competed once more at the European Championships, but suffering from a back injury, he bombed out once again, this time in the snatch. But the truth is that looking at the footage of this competition, he looked, physically at least, to be in pretty good shape, and I truly believe that he is not finished. He will compete in the next year in the 95 kilo weight class to try to qualify for the Olympic Games. His first stop will be the Mediterranean Games in just a few weeks, and he will then see him at the World Championships in Ningbo, China. He is already 35 years old, and he will be 37 by the time of LA 28. And if he does indeed compete in LA, it will have been 16 years since he first stepped on the Olympic stage, and 12 years since he won the Olympic Games. And I find it pretty admirable that a lifter, having gone through so much, is still pushing so hard. He has recently put up a 165 snatch double, which is huge, honestly, and he seems to be ready to prepare to get back to the highest level. Now maybe it's ego, maybe it's just talent, maybe it's a little bit of both. But there's only one thing that's sure, and it is that I'm very excited to see Kianoush Rostami lift in the coming weeks. Now, if you like this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to not miss out on the video of tomorrow.